We can do that.
No, I think we'll talk about the draft. Maybe even before we get to the draft, could we talk about like everything that's happened since we spoke last?
Oh
I mean,
gosh.
how many conversations did we have over the course of the season about DK's future, about Geno's future, and then about a week or so before it all went down, we played a little sound from our friend Daniel Jeremiah on the Move the Sticks podcast as he keeps saying, well, what if they were to trade both of those guys? Lo and behold, not more than a week or so later, that's exactly what happened. What do you make of everything that's gone on in Seattle?
I just think it was an inflection point, and I thought, you know, as we started getting into the off-season mode and started looking at it, and you talk to people that, you know, are connected in that building, including your co-host, and you just start looking at everything that goes on in the history of the league, you just kind of get a feel for these, and it just felt like the right time to do that.
Had Pete Carroll not gone to Las Vegas, could these wheels have spun the way they did?
I still think you would have found a taker. I think you would have found similar compensation for Geno somewhere. So I think it made more sense about where he was leaving as opposed to where he was going. I think they would have found some place for him, you know. So and I think the opportunity with Sam being available made that whole thing kind of come together. So I think it was more about Sam being available and being a target and feeling like you can get similar, hopefully better production, but you're going to get younger and you just feel a little bit more comfortable with that investment. So I think that was a little bit more about Sam than it even was about Geno.
Well, I think you know where I stand on it. I mean, I spent all year asking you and everybody else, like, hey, is there any way this could happen? Could they move on from Geno? Can they please move on from DK and Geno? Like, I was overjoyed. The thing that surprised me most, and maybe you could shed some light on it, I've asked Brock and Moore and Lyle here about 1,000 times, and I've gotten good answers from them, but I'll ask you as well. Why do you think the Seahawks have been so quick to say, like, hey, we didn't want to do any of this? Geno wanted to be traded. DK wanted to be traded. We offered them both deals. That's the one part that doesn't, because I agree with everything you said. It was an inflection point. It was time to move on. Why do the Seahawks seem to be so intent on saying that they didn't want to?
Well, I think some of that happens whenever you have guys leave, right? Because it's cover. You know, if the guy goes on to have success and you don't have to hear like, gosh, why did you guys move on from him? We'd like, hey, look, we tried. We had a good faith effort. We put what our value number was out there, and he didn't want it. So it's more if he broke up with us, we didn't break up with him. So some of that's in all of sports. I don't think that's specific to the NFL or to moving on from a quarterback. But the other thing is I think they had a very different opinion of what his value was, and they stuck to their number, which I think most smart teams do.
How do you think it'll go for both those guys in their new locales? For DK out in Pittsburgh, for Geno down in Vegas?
Well, let's see. I mean, you've got with Pittsburgh, I mean, we're assuming that Aaron Rodgers is going to go there, but nothing's locked in there at this point in time. I don't know how great of a fit that is with Rodgers. That's not his typical style of receiver. So, I think that the success of that decision by Pittsburgh is going to be determined off who the quarterback is next year and beyond, because this feels like this is just kind of a one-year flyer that they'll take on Aaron Rodgers. I don't think that's a perfect match, a perfect fit with DK Metcalf. I know, I guess they're throwing together at UCLA, but that one to me doesn't look like any of the receivers he's had success with throughout his career. So I'm not as bullish on that one.
What do you think of Sam Darnold?
I've always been a fan of Sam Darnold. I've always believed in Sam Darnold's ability, and I think I just thought there's so many people that had just put their feet in the ground on him and had decided that, okay, we haven't seen anything good. He's never going to be good. He's not good. And it was like they were just eyeballing the first sign of regression, and then they were gonna throw away the whole rest of the season based off the last two games. And I think Sam even said as much, or you've heard it said that, look, the one game at the end of the year against the Lions was on him. He didn't play well. It was on the road and a chance to win that division. He did not play well. In the playoff game, nobody was playing well in that situation. He got the tar kicked out of him. I mean, they couldn't protect. He had no chance. And I always just tell people that are crucifying him over those two games, well, then you better be the same person who's crucifying Patrick Mahomes for the Super Bowl then too, because that's the same type of a situation. I don't care how great you are. When you can't pass protect and you got no time and you're getting the crud kicked out of you, it's not going to look good, and that's what happened in that last game with Minnesota. So I believe in Sam, and I think Seattle is a perfect place because they've seen a quarterback who was drafted and talked about the tools that he possessed, and it didn't quite work out for a while, and he just kind of needed to get in that right spot and that right fit, and then off he goes. So I was like, this is a Geno Jr. situation. I mean, it's history repeating itself.
Well, and obviously he won't have that offensive line problem here because they've taken so many steps to address it. It's so much better now.
Yeah, here we go. I'm looking forward to seeing what the draft brings here.
Better bring something. John's already said there's no centers, so there's nothing you can do.
DJ, congratulations, DJ. On Tuesday, it took exactly 7 minutes to get to this point with Jeff Passan.
Here we are.
Yeah, and Jeff Passan said, well, there's always an octave change. You can tell with Salk, there's an octave change in the voice.
Yeah.
It took exactly 7 minutes to get to DJ and with DJ before the sarcasm.
To be fair, there's you can't sign anybody. Nobody is signable. It's hard to sign anyone because everyone is a problem. This guy's too big. This guy's too slow. This guy's too fast. This guy's not big enough. This guy won't.
Football.
It's just hard because there aren't any good offensive linemen, which is why no one signed any.
But you forgot also the other side of that, which is now we have new coaches. We're going to make our existing players better. So that's
unfortunately, I'm watching that with the Mariners and they're hitting, and I'm not seeing a lot of that. So it's really
it's
hard
the batter's
for me to
eye,
believe
man. Come
that
on, it's just the batter's eye issue. That's all.
Yeah, and it's just been the coaching for the last decade with 5 different coaches on the
help
offensive
me on this
line.
one, then, DJ.
You got to
DJ,
find offensive linemen.
Help
you
me on
can't
this
talk
one.
about. You can't make baseball analogies right now, okay? Because all I can think of is 7-0. Merrill's extended for the next 9 years. I totally lost my train of thought.
Ooh, he's good.
Help me understand this one. Some just bricks and mortar behind the scenes. How much do organizations, and in this case the Seattle Seahawks, look at this upcoming draft? They've done the work. They've been at the combine. They've got their grades. They've got their feeling of how they're going to project these prospects into this draft in 3 weeks. And how much do they compare that with what is on the free agent market? So when it comes to Will Fries and Tevin Jenkins and Lucas Patrick and the number of guys they brought through their building to say, okay, this is what we've got coming. Here's the multitude of different options we have on April 24th and 25th and 26th. Let's compare that to these guys coming through the door here, and how much of a role does that play in activity or inactivity?
Well, I think that's 100% part of it. I mean, you're trying to evaluate the whole, and the challenge is in this particular year is you had a combination of two things, which put some teams in a hard spot. Which is you have one of the worst free agency years that we've seen, so there's not a ton of talent out there, and every team because of the TV contracts has oodles and oodles of bucks. So everybody has space, which means we are set up for drastic overpays. So if you look at free agency from a traditional value standpoint, you're like, look what Banks got. Like, are you kidding me? Like, we're not paying him that. Like, that's insane. But when there's so many teams with so much money and such a dearth of talent, you're going to get massive overpays. And so if you're not comfortable grossly overpaying, you're not getting anybody in this offseason.
Where do you live in San Diego? I know you're in San Diego. Where do you live?
East County.
Oh, East County. Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's some of the homes in San Diego are pretty pricey, right? I mean, they're not always the nicest, not every home, but if you want to live in Encinitas, if you want to live in,
can't find anything decent under $2 million.
Yeah, it's hard because it's expensive because, that's just what the price is. And you're overpaying for that house because of all of those reasons. But if you want to live there, then that's what you got to spend on a house. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, that's what it costs. And when you've been homeless for 10 years, at some point you're going to have to spend the money on a house if you want to live somewhere. It's really frustrating to me. And I don't know which of the guys that went other places they should have had. I'm not a scout. I don't pretend to be. I don't know whether Tevin Jenkins was great or Ryan Kelly or any of the other guys that went from one team to another. But at least 6, 7, 8, 9 guys changed teams at the interior offensive line spot, and none of them would have been a good fit here. None.
Well, I think to keep your analogy rolling, I think that they evaluated the housing market and they thought that maybe some of these houses were needed a little bit of renovation. Some of them they did not love the location, and they know with the draft coming, there's new condos that are being built in the next couple months, and they can maybe go get one of those cheaper condos, and then they can spend their money elsewhere. Maybe
so is that
on a
what
nice
they're going to
vacation
do?
spot.
Did they have to do that now, though?
I mean, look, I would be shocked if their first 3 picks don't include one of those guys. and that's at least one plug and play starter, which you should be able to find here. And then you just try and you take some shots as you go throughout the draft. But
And your
they're
favorite-
going to have to address a position, 100%.
Your favorite today, 3 weeks from today, and we'll let you sharpen your pencil over the next 3 weeks as you hone in and listen and everything else. But if you were to kind of say today, man, the home run pick for an interior offensive lineman to fit this new scheme and to fit these Seahawks and plug and play starter day one is
Gray Zabel. I would take Gray Zabel. I think he can do everything. I love Booker. Booker in gap scheme and just power and firm pocket and intelligence, leadership, all that stuff off the charts. I'm still a Booker fan. I love Booker, but to me, Gray Zabel can give you the majority of that stuff, as well as the ability to get out in space and do things second level and pull them and just give you the versatility. Plus, he's got legit 5-position flex on an offensive line that's had injury issues over the years. Having a guy like that who you can kind of shuffle the deck around a little bit, I thought he would be just a tremendous value for them.
So in chatting with the folks around there a little bit, what I've come to understand, DJ, is one of the most important components that these, and man, they got a run game. Since we talked to you, they've got an O-line coach, an assistant O-line coach, a run game coordinator, a run game analyst. I mean, they brought in as much resources I've ever seen an organization bring in within this scheme. From what I understand, they say, hey, first step quickness is a priority. It's a premium if you're going to run this kind of zone blocking scheme. Who are a few of the linemen not named Gray Zabel that may be in the second and third round, guys that have a really great first step twitch that could also be fits?
Yeah, the first name actually that pops into mind, and he might be more of a third, fourth round pick, but just when the first name that popped up is actually Jonah Monheim from SC. Now his issue has just been a little bit of strength anchor, but man, you're talking just first step quickness. Can you get out and move? He's outstanding with that, and he's really really smart on top of that. So that's more like third, fourth round type. Going through my list here and looking at some of the other guys with quickness, I think Donovan Jackson plays with quickness out of Ohio State. I think he's my 41st player. I think he's going to go in the second round, probably top half of the second round would be my guess. Other guys, I know he doesn't have length, which worries some people, but again, probably fourth round. Joshua Gray from Oregon State is someone who can really move, has got excellent quickness. Is a good football player. Again, you're just trying to get around the length. But those are a couple names if we're just going to focus on that specific trait.
We spent a little time talking about the idea of a trade with that pick, and Bill Barnwell had thrown this one out there, so I'll throw it at you and get your thought on it. Essentially giving up number 18, getting back Wyatt Teller, the guard from Cleveland, and also the 33rd and 67th pick. So you get the first pick in the second round, third pick in the third round, plus a guard in order to move back from 18. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to go back and look at Wyatt Teller and study him a little bit more. I mean, he was a great player a few years ago. I don't know where his level of play is at currently, so I wouldn't have the wisdom to offer a take on that one. But I do like in this particular draft, I do like getting into day two as much as possible. I think that's kind of the sweet spot, for what this draft is.
DJ,
I've talked to teams about all the time, Brock, and we're going over players. And you can talk to one team and they're like, this guy's going to go in the 50s, and you talk to another team and they're like, this guy's going to go in the teens. That's the range. I mean, it's all over the map.
Is that rare?
I would say it's become more commonplace over the last few years, but I just think this year I don't know. There's been similarly graded players, but this year they're lower graded. You know what I mean? So, like on our grading scale, it's like, man, in years past we might have had more like 6.4, 6.5, 6.7 type grades, and there's some similarities with some teams. And this year it's like the whole draft is just full of 6.3s, which are like traditional second round type players.
Brock and I got into a debate yesterday as we're talking to Daniel Jeremiah. I ended up writing about it a little bit last night about this whole, this dichotomy you hear every year. Best available or need. And I think I'm done with this debate. I don't ever want to hear it. It doesn't make any sense. There have to be more
Can I
options,
explain it?
right?
Can I explain it?
Yeah, let him explain it first.
Please do, yeah.
Okay, so here's how this works, because every year you hear this, and every team, you'll notice, and listen to the post press conferences. We stuck to our board. We went with best available player, which means they're the highest rated player. So you got the board going horizontal, right, which is all the positions, so you grade them up that way, and then you have to meld them together to put your master list together. So what happens is teams organize their list. They stack their list. They grade them and then they stack them and move them over to their overall list by their need. And then what they do is they say, yep, we took the best available player. Yeah, but you just stacked your list based off your need. So what the heck is the difference?
Well, I'm glad you say that, because that sort of fits the point I was trying to make. There's no way that those are the only two options. Should I take the best available player, or should I take my biggest need? Oh, I don't know. What about a third option? And for me, the word that I was using with Brock yesterday is impact. Which position is going to give you impact? You might have one player who's a higher graded player than another, maybe even at a position of bigger quote unquote need. But if it's not a position that provides a tremendous amount of impact for the style that you want on your team, then you probably shouldn't draft him there.
Yeah, I think impact's a good word. I think there's also the financial component to this that I've heard way more over the last handful of years, which is like we were talking about. Who was it? It was talking to a team, and I was discussing how would you stack this little clump of receivers versus it might even have been like it was a defensive tackle, I believe, and he said his point was, well, with what I'd have to pay a receiver on the open market and the lack of quality receivers who ever even get to the market anymore, it's too much value for me to take the defensive tackle. Like there's going to be defensive tackles in free agency. We can find one if we need one. But like impact receivers, like those guys are going for $30 million a year and they don't get to the market. So
better take a guard then, or better take a guard or a center, because apparently all the ones that get to the free agent market are overpriced and not very good. So you better be drafting three of them.
This car always ends up in the same garage in this conversation.
DJ, for the last month in your absence, remember Nickelodeon growing up and they get slimed? I'm sitting there every day getting slimed by sarcasm, and I'm trying to put like a different shield or something. Like I don't know what more I can say on this. Here is a question though, so I'll use the word value.
I'm glad to have a new target in DJ to get up with this instead of you.
Yeah, now you're sick of me too. Here you go. Come sit by me. It's
Yeah.
gonna be wonderful. Do teams put, and I think you just kind of answered there as you laid out that board, do teams put a different premium by position? So yesterday, as we were debating this, I said, Salk, okay, so here's the deal. X receiver at number 18, he's got an 8.2 grade. He's just a phenomenal whatever. And then you've got interior lineman at a 6.8 grade, right? But that, positionally, and certainly the need on your team, in this case the Seahawks, obviously have a huge need on the interior offensive line. But do teams, by and large, across the league, put premiums on big people, O-line, D-line, versus some of those other perimeter positions?
I think different teams handle that differently. It's not all the same.
Okay.
So some teams are just going to say, like, I go into the draft with my goal in the first round to take the best available big guy, either side of the line of scrimmage. The Eagles, for the most part, and they've taken receivers and they've done, they've gone off that script a little bit. But that's their preference, is if they have it anywhere close, they're going to take the bigger guy. There's several teams that think that way. But there's other times where I've been in teams, I go back to my time in the Ravens. This is like in the early 2000s, and I don't remember who the coach was, but it was like we needed another safety to play next to Ed Reed. And he was like, we can't line up and play with what we have right now. So you can talk about all these other positions, and you want to guard, and I know that this coach wants that, and we can't line up and play week one. I don't have a safety. And so that's those conversations, and then sometimes that works, and sometimes the general manager say, thanks, appreciate it. Well, you don't get to sit in the draft room during the draft. You go back to your office, and we'll conduct our business, and we'll get you safety in the 5th round, and you'll make it work.
I don't think that I'd be invited into the draft
No,
office right now.
Salk would be absent. And along those lines, at Salk's school down there at Pomona, they had a grading scale. Of course they did, DJ, to what, 12, Salk?
12-point scale.
Yeah, they had 12.0.
Nice.
Yeah,
just use a 12-point scale.
They're 3x better than everybody else, by and large, and that's okay, at least in their own mind. How different are the different grading scales? You mentioned some of these teams got this guy in the teens, this guy in the 50s.
Yeah.
How much differently do the Seahawks grade through their scouting department with John? It's been here forever. How much differently do they grade versus their peers in the league, you think?
Well, there's two different styles of grades. So you have teams who grade by their role. So like when I was the Ravens system that came from Belichick, so it's you can kind of follow that lineage and that tree, and those teams we had them like the grades were correlated with 8-0 was like a perfect player. Then you'd have go all the way down the list where 6-7 was a day one impact starter. 6-3 was you're saying he is an eventual starter. He's going to start. 6-1 was a potential starter. So it was based off of your role. 59 is a backup. 57 is a practice squad player. And then there's other teams, then that's that go by the rounds. So they just have assessed the value of the overall player. He's a 1-5, like he's a middle of the first round. He's a 2-2. He's a top of the second round. Like they kind of do their grading scale that way. So those are two different ways to do it, either kind of by rounds or by deciding whether or not they're a starter, backup.
Last thing,
so on and so forth.
Before you run here is let's just talk quarterbacks real quick.
So bored. See, Brock tries to ask like a scouting question. Like, let's get in the minutia.
I guess I was trying to think about our audience and what they might care about.
Salk just like literally fell asleep.
We need alignment.
Eyes closed.
I thought the audience might want to hear about quarterbacks before you go, so I thought maybe I would bring you back around and ask
Salk,
about
man
quarterbacks.
Of the people.
That's me. I represent everybody out there. Thank you, Maura. How's the quarterback movement going, and maybe specifically about Jackson Dart?
It's interesting, man. There's
finally
some people think that we'll see 3 quarterbacks go in the first round, and there's people that think we might have 1 quarterback go in the first round, and then it's a free for all on day 2 for everybody. And I'm like, that's seems extreme to me, but there are people in the league that think there's at least an outside chance that happens. We have one go 1-1 overall, and then there's a waiting period there. So, look, we're 3 weeks out. There's stuff getting thrown against the wall all over the place, but I've had that conversation with a couple different teams.
Right, I wouldn't ask you that question.
Real quick,
out.
Real quick. Would you consider Jackson Dart either at 18 or in the second round?
He's my 35th, 36th player. So, yeah, that would put him – I'm doing my due diligence for sure. I think I want to – I'm a Sam Darnold guy, so I would prefer to try and help Sam here with this first pick. If somehow Jackson Dart's still floating around there in the second round, that might just be a situation where this is value here. I'll take it.
DJ, we cannot – you understand something, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you do, actually. You get a little taste of Salk. You've gotten to know him over the last 9 months.
Yeah.
You don't understand.
What?
If the Seahawks draft a wide receiver at 18, Salk's
I'm going to be out of my mind.
He will be so apoplectic. I know that we've agreed to talk to you, I think, a time or 2 after the draft.
Yeah, you might not want to. You might want to bail.
Do you understand what will happen? What are the possibilities right now? Percentage chance that the Seahawks take – because we've seen it mocked with a bunch of these different guys – the percentage chance today the Seahawks take a wide receiver at 18.
I don't think I've ever had that in these. The only one that I had was the last mock I got right here because this was
tight
my
end
situation. Yeah, because this was my
that would not make me vomit. By the way, tight end would be fine.
Because when the way this one worked out, because Zabel went 16 to the Cardinals, so he was off the board. And this one, Colston
DJ, your
Loveland
peers, many of your peers put a wide receiver at 18.
Either Golden or McMillan.
Yes.
No, I don't see that. But to me, that was Loveland's like my 6th or 7th player. So at some point in time, I'm like, this guy helps my quarterback, and that's tremendous value.
We obviously miss you because we have too many questions. 10 seconds. If you were going to draft Loveland at 18, is it worth trading up to 13, 14 to get Tyler Warren?
They're very closely graded. If you told me Loveland was going to fall to me, I'd take Loveland.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Good to hear. Awesome.
Do whatever you want to do with the other 4 seconds.
I love it.
Will the Padres lose before next Wednesday, when we talk to
Going to Chicago? It's a little cold there for us.
It's chilly. Oh,
I'd vomit.
That's, again, my reaction if they decide to take a wide receiver at number 18. DJ, it's good to have you back. We've missed you. We'll get back to our regularly scheduled time Wednesday at 8:30 next week. Thank you, and we'll talk then.
I appreciate it. How many shows did you do while I was gone? 3?
I have not missed a show I was just saying to these guys. I haven't taken a day off all year.
That's true.
All year. 3 months.
True.
Nice.
Goodbye. Go away. Go away, DJ. There goes
I'll
Daniel.
go check the podcast.
Well, we really do appreciate you guys watching our videos.
And remember, you can like it, you could subscribe it, you could download the Seattle Sports app so you never miss a minute.